Professor Seyed Mohammad Marandi from the University of Tehran is an Iranian academic, political analyst and an expert on American studies and post-colonial literature. He joins us now via Skype from Tehran in Iran. A very good evening to you, Professor. Thank you so much for joining us. President Donald Trump's stance on the deal, on the nuclear deal, how much of an impact would the isolation from his European allies have on the United States?
Well, the United States is already being impacted, I think, because of its the rising tensions, not only with Iran, but with Turkey, with China, with Russia, each for different reasons, and even with countries like the EU. Under Trump, the United States has had a much more aggressive foreign policy, and Trump is, of course, outside the United States, not a very popular figure, as I think your compatriots have recently saw how he interfered in the internal affairs of South Africa as well. So he has isolated the United States to a degree, but of course the United States is a superpower and it has a lot of control over financial institutions, and the dollar has a lot of influence. So he can cause a lot of trouble.
Now, President Trump believes that the sanctions will, of course, squeeze Iran and weaken the regime. We even saw the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo even saying that such turmoil, should it prevail in Iran, will be leverage that will face Iran to negotiate a new nuclear deal. How likely is that?
Well, I think that the political regime in Washington has been doing a lot of wishful thinking. The Iranians obviously will be hurt by the sanctions, but the revolution in Iran, which took place almost 40 years ago, was about independence. It was about independence and dignity and sovereignty, and also it was an anti-hegemonic revolution. Iran was, when Theresa May and the Conservative Party were pro-apartheid South Africa, or when the United States was considered Nelson Mandela a terrorist, the Iranians were supported heavily the liberation movement in South Africa, as well as the anti-apartheid movement in Palestine. And it's for these reasons that Iran is antagonized and put under so much pressure by the United States and its allies. But the Iranians, they survived 8 years of war where the United States and the Europeans provided Saddam Hussein with all sorts of weapons, including extensive usage of chemical weapons supplied by the West, and the Iranians survived. So I think that they are overestimating their power, and I think there are many independent countries, especially non-Western countries like China, like Russia, and others, who have a very strong interest in supporting Iran because they know that if the United States succeeds, that they could be next.
China has announced that it will likely be importing oil from Iran even after the United States has brought the sales of oil down to zero by November. Some pundits are saying that the state of Iran will definitely not break apart. In fact, it's going to be even much more stronger than before the nuclear deal. Are they pushing the envelope here?
Well, I think that Iran will definitely go through a very difficult situation economically, because after all, the United States is waging war on the country. Countries like China, though, they do plan to continue purchasing Iranian oil. I think that China will probably even increase its oil imports off the record. And I think that Iran is also negotiating with other countries. And I think one of the countries that the Iranians are looking to is actually South Africa, because the Iranians believe that South Africa, being an anti-hegemonic state, an anti-colonial state that has had the support of Iran during its uprisings, that they should also support Iran, as the United States is trying to strangle the country because of Iran's independent foreign policy and its opposition to apartheid in Palestine.
What kind of violations did the breaking away from this deal have on Iran? Which law has the United States violated?
Well, the most important violation is the tearing up of the agreement itself. The United States committed itself to this multilateral agreement, which was negotiated for many years. The Iranians have never been pursuing a nuclear weapon, and if anyone looks through there's a very good book manufactured Crisis by Gareth Porter, if your viewers would like to read it. And it shows how the whole history of the Iranian nuclear program was basically a manufactured crisis. The United States was using the Iranian nuclear program to put pressure on Iran for other reasons, such as Iran's foreign policy, its independence, and other issues that I mentioned before. So the Americans, by violating this agreement, and the Iranians gave significant concessions when they signed on to the agreement, this itself was a very extraordinary move. Of course, under Obama, even though the agreement was signed back then, Obama violated the agreement repeatedly. But what Trump did was he just simply threw it out the window, and he's telling the international community that you abide by my terms. I dictate terms to the international community, including the countries that signed on to the agreement, his own allies in the European Union. And he's behaving like some sort of global godfather.